In the dark heart of World War II, as Europe lay under Nazi occupation and the fate of the free world hung in the balance, the Allies conceived one of the strangest and most daring intelligence operations ever attempted – Operation Mincemeat. It was a deception so audacious that it seemed born from fiction, yet it would go on to save tens of thousands of lives and alter the course of the war. The year was 1943. The Allies had won in North Africa and were preparing to invade southern Europe, the soft underbelly of Hitler's fortress. The obvious next step was Sicily, but because it was so obvious, German intelligence expected it. The challenge for British strategists was to convince Hitler and his generals that the invasion would strike somewhere else. For this, they turned to the masters of deception, the 20 Committee, XX Committee, of MI5, a top-secret branch dedicated to disinformation and counter-espionage. Under the guidance of Ewan Montagu, a brilliant naval intelligence officer, and Charles Cholmondeley, an eccentric MI5 officer with a taste for the unorthodox, they would create a plan that defied military logic: to plant false invasion documents on a dead body and let the Germans discover them. The idea stemmed from an old memo by British naval officer Ian Fleming. Yes, the same Fleming who would later create James Bond. The memo suggested that a corpse carrying fake papers might be dropped off the enemy coast to mislead them about Allied plans. The concept seemed morbid and risky, but desperate times demanded imagination. And so began Operation Mincemeat, a plot to trick Hitler using a man who had already died. The first problem was finding the right body. It had to appear as though he had died in an air crash at sea, and the body had to be convincing enough to pass German medical examination. After searching through London morgues, pathologist Sir Bernard Spilsbury and his team identified an unclaimed body of a man who had died from ingesting rat poison, a death that left his lungs filled with fluid resembling a drowning victim. His identity would remain secret for decades, but later research revealed him as Glyndwr Michael, a homeless Welshman whose unfortunate death gave him an unlikely posthumous role in one of history's greatest deceits. The corpse was transformed into Major William Martin of the Royal Marines, a completely fabricated persona. Every detail of Martin's life was meticulously constructed. An ID card, ration book, theater ticket stubs, a silver cross from a sweetheart, and even love letters from his fictional fiancée, Pam. The goal was simple: to make him real in every possible way. The British called this process creating the pocket litter, a technique of filling a spy's pockets with plausible items to tell a believable story. Montagu and Cholmondeley debated every detail, down to what kind of underwear Major Martin would wear. The centerpiece of the deception was a briefcase handcuffed to the corpse's wrist. Inside were the secret documents, forged letters between high-ranking Allied generals suggesting that the main Allied invasion would target Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. The letters even hinted that Sicily was merely a diversion. Once the body was prepared, the next step was delivery. The location chosen was the coast of Spain near Huelva, a region full of German agents but officially neutral. On the night of April 30, 1943, the British submarine HMS Seraph surfaced off the Spanish coast. The crew, sworn to secrecy, lifted the corpse, now dressed in full uniform, to the deck. As they recited a brief prayer, they gently released the body into the cold Mediterranean waters. The tide carried it toward shore, where Spanish fishermen soon discovered it. The local authorities recovered the body and notified British officials, who feigned distress at the loss of one of their officers. But behind the scenes, MI5 monitored every move. The British knew the Germans had contacts within Spanish intelligence, particularly through the Abwehr, Germany's military espionage agency. The hope was that the Spaniards would secretly pass the documents to the Germans.
To strengthen the illusion, the British embassy in Madrid began urgently demanding the return of the briefcase, acting desperate to recover it. Exactly what the Germans would expect if it contained something truly important. The trap was set. The Spanish delayed the return, giving the Germans time to photograph and analyze the letters. Through intercepted Enigma communications, British intelligence later confirmed that the contents had indeed reached Berlin. Hitler himself read the false correspondence and believed it. Convinced that Greece and Sardinia were the true invasion points, he ordered the Wehrmacht to divert troops away from Sicily, reinforcing Greece and the Balkans instead. The deception had worked perfectly. When the Allies invaded Sicily on July 9, 1943, German defenses were stretched thin. The operation's success was immediate and devastating for the Axis. Within weeks, Allied forces captured the island, paving the way for the eventual invasion of mainland Italy. The body of Major William Martin was buried with full military honors in Huelma, Spain. His gravestone bore the inscription, Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country.
For decades, few knew the truth of who he really was. Operation Mincemeat remained one of Britain's best-kept secrets until the 1950s, when Ewan Montague published a sanitized account in his book, The Man Who Never Was. The story fascinated the world, a spy tale so unbelievable that Hollywood turned it into a film in 1956. Yet much of the truth remained hidden until the 1990s, when declassified files revealed new details about the operation's creation, the internal debates, and the human cost behind the deception. Intelligence officers had agonized over whether it was morally acceptable to use a real corpse for the mission. But in war, morality often bent under necessity. Their decision, grim as it was, saved tens of thousands of Allied soldiers who would have otherwise faced far stronger German defenses. The success of Operation Mincemeat also had far-reaching effects on military strategy. It validated the power of psychological warfare and deception as tools of victory. The British XXX Committee, buoyed by the success, expanded its operations, using double agents to feed Hitler a steady stream of misinformation for the rest of the war. It also inspired future intelligence operations, from the Cold War to the digital age, where perception and manipulation could be as deadly as any bomb. But Operation Mincemeat was not without tragedy.
The man who played the central role, Glyndwr Michael, received no recognition in his lifetime. For decades, his grave bore the name of his fictional alter ego. Only in 1998 did historians uncover his true identity, and a new inscription was added to his tomb. Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin, Royal Marines. Today, visitors to Huelva can still see the modest grave that marks one of the strangest intersections of life and death in military history. Operation Mincemeat has since been studied in military academies around the world as a model of successful deception. Its brilliance lay not in complexity, but in psychological precision, the understanding that people, even in war, see what they expect to see. The Germans wanted to believe they had intercepted genuine intelligence. The British simply gave them what they were predisposed to believe. Every small detail reinforced the illusion. The photograph of Pam, the theater tickets in Martin's pockets, the letter from his father, the ink stains on the documents that suggested haste and authenticity. The entire operation depended on empathy, the ability to imagine what the enemy would think, what they would fear, and what they would want to confirm. That was the genius of Mincemeat. It turned human psychology into a weapon sharper than steel. The aftermath of Sicily's invasion confirmed how deeply the ruse had penetrated German command.
Hitler, obsessed with the supposed Mediterranean threat, delayed reinforcing Italy for crucial weeks. When Mussolini fell later that summer, the entire Axis position in southern Europe began to collapse. Operation Mincemeat had not only paved the way for Italy's surrender, but also accelerated the unraveling of Nazi power in the Mediterranean. In retrospect, it was a small operation with enormous consequences. Behind the secrecy, the men of British intelligence, Montagu, Cholmondeley, Spilsbury, and the sailors of HMS Seraph, carried the weight of their strange success quietly. They knew the power of deception, but they also understood its moral cost. After the war, Montagu returned to law, Cholmondeley faded from public life, and the body of their unwitting hero rested peacefully in Spanish soil. Yet their creation lived on, influencing not only military strategy, but popular imagination. Operation Mincemeat symbolized a rare kind of heroism, one born not from violence, but from ingenuity, from the courage to imagine a lie so perfect it became the truth. It remains a story of irony and humanity in a war otherwise defined by brutality. Even decades later, as historians revisited the operation, new details surfaced. The precise routes of communication between Spanish and German intelligence, the forensic analyses conducted on the corpse, the diplomatic exchanges between London and Madrid. Each discovery added another layer to the extraordinary narrative. In 2022, the story found new life with the release of a modern film adaptation, Operation Mincemeat, starring Colin Firth, reintroducing the world to the forgotten brilliance of the deception that fooled Hitler.
The operation continues to fascinate not only because of its success, but because of its humanity. A plan built on empathy, detail, and a haunting respect for the man whose death was repurposed for the living. It reminds us that wars are not only won by strength, but by imagination. Operation Mincemeat proved that the greatest victories sometimes begin with the smallest acts: a forged letter, a photograph in a wallet, a body drifting ashore, and that in the fog of war, truth itself can be the most powerful illusion of all.